Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Picture Mavericks. Every so often, a film arrives that looks like one thing and then, quietly and without warning, becomes something else entirely. Anora begins with the energy of a romantic comedy. A young woman meets a rich boy, they fall for each other, they get married in Vegas, and for a brief window, the film lets you believe in it. It lets you feel the warmth of it, and then it takes all of that away methodically and without sentimentality, and asks you to sit with what is left. Anora was written and directed by Sean Baker, released in 2024, and it won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival, which is the highest honor in international cinema. It stars Yura Borisov, Mikey Madison, and Yuri Borisov, and it was made with the kind of textured, lived-in realism that Baker has built his entire career on. It is a great film. It is also not a perfect one. And today we're going to be honest about both of those things. The thesis of Anora is simple and devastating. It is a film about a woman who mistakes a transaction for a feeling, who builds something real inside a situation that was never designed to hold it, and who is then made to understand, slowly and publicly and cruelly, that the world she briefly occupied was never hers to keep. The themes we are focusing on today are exploitation, love, and illusion. Because Anora is not really about a bad marriage. It is about the systems that decide whose feelings count and whose do not. Ani is a stripper in an upscale Manhattan club, and she is good at her job. She is sharp, funny, physically present, and she knows exactly how to make a man feel like the most interesting person in the room. That is a professional skill, and the film respects it as one. When she is introduced to Ivan, known as Vanya, she reads him quickly and correctly. He is a rich kid. He is lonely in the specific way that people who have never been told no tend to be lonely. He is looking for something, and Ani is available. And available means something different when you have unlimited money. What makes the film interesting is that it does not frame Ani as naive. She knows what this is at the start. She accepts $15,000 to spend a week with him. She's clear-eyed about the transaction. What shifts, gradually and almost imperceptibly, is that the transaction begins to feel like something else. Vanya is playful and generous and present in a way that feels, if you are not paying close attention, like genuine intimacy. The Vegas trip is the film's first great set piece. It is spontaneous and ridiculous and romantic, and the proposal in the chapel is shot with just enough warmth that you want to believe in it. The film is generous here. It lets the fairy tale breathe. And then Vanya mentions the green card. It is delivered casually, almost as an afterthought, and that casualness is the point. For Vanya, the marriage is practical. It solved the problem. The love, whatever it was always secondary to the convenience. Ani hears this and chooses to stay anyway, which is perhaps the film's most psychologically honest moment. Because she has already invested. She has already quit her job. She has already let herself believe. This is the illusion the film is examining. Not that Ani was fooled, but that the conditions Ani was living inside made belief the only affordable option. The arrival of Toros, Garnick, and Igor at the mansion is the moment the film's genre shifts completely. What was a romantic comedy becomes something rawer and more uncomfortable, a kind of siege film in which Ani is the territory being disputed. Toros is Vanya's godfather and fixer, a man whose job is to make Vanya's problems disappear. Garnick is blunt and physical. Igor is quieter, more observant, and the film will return to him. Together, they represent the machinery that exists to protect people like Vanya from the consequences of people like Ani. The word they use for Ani, repeatedly and without hesitation, is prostitute. It is used as a classification, as a way of placing her outside the category of people whose feelings are worth considering. This is not incidental. The film is deliberate about this language because it understands that dehumanization is how systems of power protect themselves. If Ani is a prostitute, she cannot also be a wife. She cannot also be someone who is genuinely hurt. The word forecloses the conversation. Galina, Vanya's mother, arrives later and is more refined about it, but she is doing exactly the same thing. She is not cruel in a theatrical way. She is cold in a structural way. She does not need to shout at Ani because she does not need to acknowledge Ani as a person capable of posing a real threat. That is a more frightening kind of power. Vanya, crucially, sides with his family. He does not fight for Ani. He does not even apologize. He simply steps back into the world that was always his, leaving Ani on the wrong side of a door that was never really open to her. The film's portrait of class is not subtle, but it does not need to be. It is accurate. Money does not just buy things. It buys the right to define reality. And Ani never had the money to contest that definition. The most complicated and rewarding question Anora asks is this: how much agency does Ani actually have? The answer the film gives is not nothing and not enough, which is probably the most honest answer available. Ani is not a passive character. When Garnik and Igor try to physically restrain her, she fights. She breaks things, she bites. She refuses to be subdued without a cost. When Toros tries to buy her off with $10,000, she negotiates. When Galina threatens her in Las Vegas, she threatens back, leveraging the one thing she has, the absence of a prenuptial agreement. All of that resistance is real, and all of it is ultimately absorbed by a system that has more resources than she does, more lawyers, more patience, more willingness to simply wait her out. The annulment is signed. The ring is taken. The money is handed over like a receipt. Ani is processed and released, and the family moves on without missing a step. This is exploitation in its most functional form. It does not require malice. It just requires that one party have significantly more power than the other, and that the less powerful party care more about the outcome. Ani cared about the marriage. The Zakharovs cared about the inconvenience. That asymmetry decided everything. What the film refuses to do is make Ani a victim in the flat, uncomplicated sense. She made choices. Some of them were clear-eyed, and some were driven by hope, and some were both at once. The film holds all of that without collapsing it into a simple lesson. That is one of the things it does brilliantly. Igor is the film's secret. He is introduced as Muscle, one of Toros's henchmen, a large, quiet man who follows instructions and does not volunteer opinions. He is part of the system that dismantles Ani's marriage. He is present for all of it. But the film watches him watching Ani. And what Igor sees, over the course of one long, exhausting night searching Brooklyn for Vanya, is a woman who is entirely real and entirely being erased. He does not intervene in any dramatic sense. He cannot, because he is also an employee, also a man whose existence depends on the goodwill of the same family. He has more power than Ani in this situation, but not as much as the film might initially suggest. The night they spend together in the mansion after everything is over is the quietest section of the film and the most emotionally precise. Ani learns it was Igor's birthday the previous day. Nobody acknowledged it. He is, in his own way, also invisible to the people he works for. When Igor discreetly returns Ani's wedding ring the next morning, the gesture is small, and the film knows it is small. He cannot undo what happened. He cannot give her back what she lost. But he can return the one object that meant something to her, the one acknowledgement that her experience was real. The ending, in which Ani initiates intimacy with Igor and then breaks down sobbing in his arms, is the film at its most vulnerable. It is not a redemption. It is not a new romance. It is simply two people from the margins of other people's lives finding each other for a moment, without agenda and without illusion. Yura Borisov's performance as Igor is the best in the film. He does almost nothing, and what he does almost nothing with is extraordinary. Anora is a very good film. It is also a film with seams, and being balanced means acknowledging both. What Sean Baker gets right is considerable. The texture of Ani's world is immediate and convincing. Brighton Beach feels lived in. The strip club feels functional rather than sensationalized. The film does not leer at Ani's profession. It treats it as work, which is the correct and rare choice. The tonal shift from the first act's romantic energy to the second act's siege comedy to the third act's quiet devastation is handled with real skill. Each section has a different rhythm and a different emotional register, and the transitions between them are almost seamless. Almost. The middle section, the long night of searching Brooklyn for Vanya, runs longer than it needs to. The comedy of Toros's increasingly frantic attempts to manage the situation is funny, but it also diffuses tension at moments when the film might be better served by letting it build. It is a pacing choice that some viewers will find entertaining and others will find exhausting. Vanya is a more significant issue. He is well observed as a type, the rich kid who has never been denied anything and therefore does not understand the weight of what he is doing to other people. But the film lets him disappear from the third act without consequence or confrontation. He simply steps back into his life. Ani never gets to say to his face what she knows about him. That absence is intentional. It reflects how these situations actually resolve, but it still leaves something unresolved in the viewer that the film does not fully address. Mikey Madison's performance as Ani is committed and physical and often very good. There are moments in the third act, particularly the breakdown at the end, where it reaches something genuinely raw. The film around her is not always as precise as she is. The Palme d'Or was deserved. It is a bold and humane film about a subject most cinema ignores or misrepresents. It is also a film that could have been tightened by about 15 minutes and sharpened in its final act. Both of those things are true at the same time. Anora matters in 2024 because it is a film that takes seriously the experience of someone the world is designed to overlook. It does not sentimentalize Ani, and it does not condescend to her. It follows her through something genuinely painful and lets her feel the full weight of it without offering a tidy resolution. Sean Baker has spent his career making films about people on the economic margins of American life, and Anora is his most ambitious and most accomplished work. It is imperfect in specific and identifiable ways, and it is still one of the best films released this year. The image that stays with you is not the Vegas wedding or the fight in the mansion or even the annulment. It is Ani, in the back of a car, sobbing into the arms of a man who was supposed to be her enemy and turned out to be the only person in the film who treated her like she was real. That is what Anora is finally about. Not the marriage, not the money, not the class war, though all of those things are in it. It is about the cost of wanting to be seen in a world that has already decided you are not worth looking at. Thank you for watching Picture Mavericks. And if this breakdown gave you something new to think about, consider subscribing because we go deeper so you do not have to. See you in the next one.